You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And we have a very special guest and friend of the podcast, maybe all-time reigning champion of podcast guests for the Bearded Theologians. We have the most holy and high Rev.Matt Rawle with us today.
I'm thankful that if there's a gold medal to be had, then I get a gold medal from the Bearded Theologians.
Yeah, if there is a podcast Olympics.
not any kind of physical prowess or skill set, just being alive and breathing into a microphone. Yeah. If you know, I can get those awards.
That's all that we can give out, you know.
That's right, and that's all I can get. That's why we're a great team. It's the only thing you give, and it's the only thing I can get. So that's right. There we are.
We're basically the Dundies of the podcast world.
Oh,
so.
That's a great deep cut. That's good. That's really good. And don't think for a minute I'm not gonna immediately after we stop talking go and figure out how to make a Bearded Theologian award, like a plastic guy holding a wreath kind of a thing.
I've already got one in mind. I'm just gonna take off one of my little kids' trophies and peel off the whatever it was, like first or second place in T-ball, and I'm gonna stick that on there and I'm gonna send it to you, and it will just be like a little guy playing baseball. And
it's gonna say great. It's gonna say bushiest beard. It's gonna be great.
Yes.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, that'll work. You do have me on that. That's for sure. Well done.
It's the Montana effect. That's all it is.
That's true, because it is not less than 80 degrees right now. So I mean, that's called survival, friends. That's how you walk to the car in the morning.
That's right.
Good Lord.
It's the best. Well, Matt, we have you on as always this time of year, because you write phenomenal Advent books, and you've got a new one coming out this year called Experiencing Christmas. And man, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So really, it's an Advent study that kind of jumps into and marvels at the fact that God has put on flesh, and that God now has the same senses in the person of Jesus, has the same senses that we do. And there's some really cool things about that God can see and God can hear, and God knows hunger for the first time. These kinds of things. And there's also theologically some pretty interesting things that happen. There's no longer omnipotence when God puts on flesh, right? God only has two eyes and they face forward, so there's, God now has to sleep, these kinds of things. So, so fundamentally the book is about, yes, how we experience Christmas through sight and sound and music and visuals and this kind of thing, but also recognizing that just how vulnerable God makes God's self by being born, being dependent on humanity. And I love to think about, God had to rely on humanity in order to save humanity or to heal humanity. Jesus was born to parents, completely dependent on two humans for sustenance and going to school and all of these things of just what a absolute vulnerable love that God has for us and reveals to us. The first chapter is about sight, because that's one of the first signals that the season is changing. Is the days are getting darker. People put lights on their home. Matt changes the LED in his office, to do Mario or lizards, or I don't know what you have in the background. Oh, it says Jesus now. That's good. Well done. Well done. So sight is one of those first markers that the season is changing, right? And when we've talked about this before in other works of Jesus being the light of the world and what that means, and how that's just kind of a perfect metaphor for who Christ is. So we kick things off with the visuals of light and how that's important and the way that works. I mean, the wise men followed a star, right? There's light that introduces this story.
I like that. And we focus a lot on waiting at the beginning of
Yeah.
Advent, right? And we get into it often with prophecy, and then we hear either Joseph or Mary, and we hear from John. But I think I love that focus on we're about to have a baby.
Yeah.
And what does that mean?
Yeah.
I don't, and just the drama and real seriousness around the birth of Jesus and what that means and what they have to do just to quite literally survive, right?
Right. And there's this gap between anticipation
Mhm.
and expectation.
Mm.
So in that first chapter, I talk about how Jeremiah, while writing his prophecies, you mentioned prophecies, Jeremiah is writing these prophecies. He's seeing Jerusalem burn to the ground. And yet what he sees is a messianic hope.
Mm.
How do you get there? How do you look at rubble and fire and a Babylonian empire coming in and be filled with a messianic hope, right? Well, how do you see? Well, and it's the difference between anticipation and expectation. Anticipation is responding to what you already know, right? Muscle memory. Baseball is a great example of this, right? You don't have time to discern if it's a sinker or a slider, right? It's coming at you. So you have to lean into muscle memory, and you have to anticipate where the ball is. But that is not expectation. Expectation is anticipation that has been imbibed with hope.
Hmm.
That's the difference. Expectation is a hopeful anticipation. You can anticipate through practice and study. Expectation is the activity of the Holy Spirit. You can't prepare for it. You can be in the right place. You can be in an environment that is helpful for the Spirit to move. But expectation is the activity of God, right? And as I say, when we come for Christmas Eve, when we come to worship on Christmas Eve, we anticipate a baby, but are we expecting salvation, right?
Mhm.
What are you seeing in this moment? That kind of rounds out the first chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of so I'm using this for and you and I've been talking using this for my church's Advent series this year. And the very first line in the first chapter is like, what's your fondest Advent or Christmas memory? So I ask you that. What is your fondest Advent or Christmas memory? We'll start with either one of you.
Yeah. My fondest. Well, I'll start with the superficial and the shallow. Let's start there, and then I'll think of some really amazing, deep theological.
You got the G.I.
impressive-
Joe battleship, didn't you?
You're
That's
not
what
wrong.
it
No, what I
is.
was going to say. No. Shut up. What I was going to say is I got Optimus Prime one year. I was the coolest kid on the street, man. I got Optimus, like the whole thing, like the trailer and the deal. And I remember my dad came home with a big, and now so Santa comes in the morning, but in the evening we opened presents as a kid. And I remember opening Optimus Prime and thinking, like, I am the coolest person on this block right now, yo. Like, oh my, so the first thing that comes to mind is not this deep theological meaningful moment. It's I got Optimus Prime, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I always love the Christmas Eve or Silent Night by candlelight. That's always a beautiful thing. And in fact, this past year, for Holy Thursday, as we were leaving the sanctuary for Holy Thursday, we played Silent Night in a minor key, which was super haunting. And I offer that to anyone who is listening. Try that, because that brings this. It's recognizable just enough for people to say, "Oh, right." Because I remember the last time we were here, processing out on a high holy day, we were singing Silent Night, and now it's in a minor key, and it's haunting.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, outside of Optimus Prime, I guess I would have to say that Silent Night by Candlelight is always something. It's like Jesus can't be born until that happens. That's a marker of the season for me, for sure. Zach, what about you?
Love that. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are coming back into style.
Absolutely. And my son loves Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Mine does too. So pumped. We went and saw the movie, and that
So did
dude's
we.
like, yeah, he's going back and watching the old movies. And we were in Target the other day, and they're making the old school toys. Like
love it.
packaging, everything's the same about them. And so going into Target now, I'm like, oh, I'm a kid again. Like these are the ones that I had. And I was like 6 and one Christmas. I mean,
so who are you? Are you Donatello? Are you Leonardo? Like
Donatello. Who else are you gonna be? Come on, baby.
Leonardo, but okay, go ahead.
Get out of here.
Leonardo's the leader.
He's
That's
fine.
He's got the katana blades.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Donatello's smart. And he's got a bow
stick.
staff.
It's a bow staff. What
the bow staff sells it for me.
God.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you know, I can remember going into our living room, all 4 Ninja Turtles, April, Splinter, the Turtle Blimp, right? Like my parents hooked me up. Mm-hmm. And I think back about that now. Dude, my parents didn't have 2 nickels, man. I don't know how they did it. I had 2 other brothers. They crushed it at Christmas. You know, my parents showed up, you know. And walking through the store the other day with my son and looking at all the toys and him being pumped about them, I was like, it brought all of that back.
That's beautiful.
And it was so much fun. So much fun.
Franks, what about you? Do you have a
well, do you have a holy favorite? Do you have a
I do have a holy moment.
Yeah. I was
no, I was good with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's great, Don.
Just Ninja Turtles. The next year I got the Vanilla Ice soundtrack. It was great. Go Ninja,
so
go
good.
Ninja. That's right.
What it's like. Boom, boom, boom. Anyway, go ahead.
You can't do more than 10 seconds. We have to pay for it.
No. That's right. That's right.
My holy moment. I probably replace them every year, right? Because they're just each year so special, and moved around a bunch, and so it's just kind of what's right in front of me. But last year, our Wiggle Friendly service where we had our kids, I read my whole Advent series last year wasn't Matt Rawle. It was Matthew Paul Turner.
That's fine.
I took us all.
I'm thankful you're branching out. That's good.
Yeah, you know. But still in the Matthew wheelhouse. So
I mean, your therapist might have a thing or two to say about that.
For sure. I can only remember one person's name, so but yeah, it did a whole Advent around that, and then for Christmas Eve, brought all of the kids forward and just read them the story. Very Mr. Rogers style, right? Sitting in a high back chair, reading the story and just unpacking the story of Christmas and what it means, and how we see, right, how these colors make a difference and an impact in our lives. And it's those little things that we pull out of that. It was awesome, man. We had a whole mess of kids that just sat there and listened and helped like it was so cool.
It's great. Yeah. Franks.
So
Matthew.
I think mine, growing up was like, I had this whole mentality that I was going to ninja and just like be the first kid. Cause there's like, usually if all my siblings were there, it was 5 of us. And so like, I always had to feel like I had to be the first. And so like, I would set up where I was asleep. I did the couple of years where I put the pillows in the bed and act like I was asleep and then like shimmy my way through places. And I'd always do that. Like I'd always try to be the first kid up to be in the space first to see what everybody got, and then either carefully put it back to where like my sisters didn't know that I looked at their stuff and all that, just that way I could be I had to always be the first. And I'll never forget that the one year it was my first year or my second year in college, and I had played at Christmas Eve at another church like 4 hours away. And so I did that at midnight, and then I drove all the way home that night. It was about 4 hours away. And so when I got like outside of my hometown, I called my sisters at like 3 or 4 in the morning and said, I'm going to be first. And then I just hung up, to me, it was always about getting there. Like, I always loved coming up with ways of like, how am I going to ninja into the room before Santa got there or after Santa got there without, getting caught. That was always my deal. And so that's the one that always comes to mind, is like, I always had to be first to like in the living room, Christmas Day had to be like, there was,
I remember, I found New Kids on the Block tickets in my parents' bedroom one year, and my mother knew that I had found them, and she threatened me within an inch of my life. She goes, if you tell your sisters that they're getting New Kids on the Block tickets, I'm going to sell you to Montana. I think that's exactly what she said. Something like that. I'm gonna sell you to the city in which they buried E.T. in the ground.
That's right.
E.T.
Going to
video game.
Alamogordo, New Mexico. And
New
nothing,
Mexico. not
nothing
Montana.
says Merry Christmas like I will ship you off.
I will ship you to the desert.
Yes.
Yes. That's good.
I love that.
And my sacred was in my first appointment, I had a 2-point charge, and the first charge, all they did for Christmas Eve for a very long time was just come and go communion, and that was it. And so, and then I would roll into the next church because they kind of just like stacked upon each other. And so what I proposed was we offer that, but then we offer the midnight mass. And then and I didn't know how many people were going to show up. Like I was expecting maybe four or five people. You know, those people are always there. We had 50 people show up that Sunday, which in that church was huge. And like, I literally said the first words out of my mouth when, you know, did the welcome, I was like, thank you for the best Christmas gift I could ever receive. And it's always, that service is always special to me. It always has been, whether I'm in charge or whether, you know, even the couple of years that I wasn't serving in a church, even if I'd been to services before with Ashley, I would still go to I would find a midnight service to go to, because there's just something about it for me that when I walk out of the church and I know it's Christmas Day, like there's just something about that to me that just has that. It's just something that's very spiritual for me. And that's always my one thing.
Yeah. And better you than me. I remember when I was an associate, because you can abbreviate associate any way you want, I had to do the midnight mass. Or the midnight gathering. And I remember like after that, then going home and then having to put together a bike. And I was like, this is baloney.
That's exactly what I was thinking. 2 in the morning, already exhausted.
This is jacked up.
Throw a bike on top.
And the kids are they're gonna be up in 3 hours anyway. You know, right. But that's the thing, you know, so praise, right? In the second chapter of Experiencing Christmas, I talk about the sound of praise, because there's actually what is Christmas without music? I mean, right. it is ubiquitous. It's everywhere, and it's voluminous. There's tons and tons and tons of songs. But in the Christmas story itself, there is no music. It says the angels said, "Glory to God." They were praising and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven." Right. That word is called aineo in Greek. Aineo, praising or to praise. Right. So curiously, that word only appears 3 times in Luke's gospel. So there's an intentional move there. The first time is there was a multitude of heavenly hosts praising, aineo, and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, peace on earth." You know, the second time that it's used, there was a multitude of disciples when Jesus triumphantly entered into Jerusalem, and they were praising God, Hosanna, right? Aineo. Right. So there's the multitude of disciples that are acknowledging the glory of God. And then the last time it is used is after the ascension, when they go home and they break bread, and it says they're constantly praising, constantly aineo, you know, or whatever the gerund of aineo is in Greek. I have no idea. But that marker is that there are these 3 pinnacle moments of this story: Jesus's birth, the triumphant entry into Jerusalem, and then Jesus's ascension, and all of them are mapped with praise and worship, you know. And I love to, especially young clergy, you know, this is such a stressful and trying time in the church, right? Especially if it's the first time you're flying solo and there's all these expectations, and you know, sometimes you have to really buff the golden calf, you know, for Christmas and some of the traditions, and whatever happens, good, bad, or indifferent, there will still be worship and praise, and Jesus will still be born. Right. If there is aineo, if there is praise in the season, then you are ushering in Christmas well.
That reminds me of like my first Christmas as a clergy person. We had to cancel Christmas Eve because of a severe snowstorm that had come through, and it was so bad that my farmers were even saying, "We're not getting out in this." And when I knew it was that bad, like, I have to admit, at first I felt a little defeated, because I was like we had to cancel this, and like, you know, this is my first one. Like, how dare we? Like, this is the one I've been working towards. Like, I'm really looking forward to this. But what ended up being out of that was we did everything on Sunday. and it still happened.
Huh.
Like, it was still really cool.
Yeah.
It was just it was a great experience in itself, but like, you're right, it doesn't matter. Like, he's still coming regardless. How
Right.
we prepare doesn't matter. It's still happening.
Right.
And I think of those moments, like, and that's something I always lean into, especially now living in Colorado. Like, there may be a situation where we may have to adapt Christmas Eve because of the weather. And so what would that look like? And now we're in an age where that can happen, like, in a different way, and can be meaningful. And so, yeah, that adaptivity is really key in the season, because I think sometimes we have that high expectation, and it's like, you can actually do it really easy. Like, you don't have to stress yourself out about it.
And I'm a bit jealous that you have the kind of weather that would necessitate canceling a Christmas.
Yeah.
We can't. So we typically have three. We have one service this time, but we typically have like a 4 o'clock traditional, a 6 o'clock contemporary, and then a bonfire at like 8 o'clock, something like that. 2 years ago, we canceled the bonfire because it was too hot. It was like 74 and raining. It was just like, this is disgusting. So we're like, I don't think we should do the bonfire. Like, this is, who wants to sit around a bonfire in 75-degree weather?
Right.
It's gross. So like, what is snow? I've only seen snow like 5 times in my life, and twice that's from airplanes, like going to a connecting flight in Chicago or something like that. It's ridiculous.
I'll be sure to blow up your phone between now and Easter with plenty of snow.
I appreciate, Zach, the constant screenshots of your weather that you text me at random moments throughout my day. That's it's kind of hurtful and rude, but memorable.
Yeah,
I mean, that's.
I just feel like you should experience Christmas, and we had the perfect Christmas weather. So I'm just trying to gear you up for this.
I appreciate that. That's very thoughtful of you. You're always thinking of me. That's kind.
I really am. Kind. I really am, especially when it's below freezing.
Well, that's true. Like, call me in January, big boy.
It's my favorite time of the year.
Yes. The phones don't work. Yeah, I'd love to call you in January. I can't.
Too cold.
Yeah. So chapter 3. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go for chapter 3.
So chapter 3, and this was the chapter that I wrestled with the most, because in the first chapter we have sight. Second chapter we have sound. Like, those are easy. The third chapter was taste. I was like, what do I do with this? So I was sitting in my office, and it took me way too long to come to this realization. And this is embarrassing, but it took me way too long to come to this realization that at some point, that first Christmas Eve, the first Noel, Mary nursed Jesus, and I never considered that or thought about that. And it's like I said, it's taken me an embarrassingly long amount of time to even consider that as part of the Christmas story. So I was in my office, and I was wondering if there was like some kind of feast day or something that recognized this first feeding, because I kind of dove into it saying, like, what could this be like the beginning of the Eucharist here? I mean, Mary with her body is sustaining Jesus, who then sustains us through grace with his body through the Eucharist and Holy Communion. I thought, certainly there's some kind of marker or recognition of this first Eucharist, or the reciprocity of Eucharist. So I went up the street to St. Jude's Catholic Church, just up the street from where I am in Bossier City. And I went to talk to the priest, like totally unannounced, just like knocked on the door, like, I need a priest. And like, oh no, there's a homeless man who wants a handout from the priest. And I waited for like an hour and a half, like, because there was a worship service going on, and he was also talking to another couple about giving to the church. I don't want to interrupt that,
right.
So I'm just like waiting in the lobby or whatever. And finally, I meet with him, and I lay out the whole thing, and he's like, he goes, there isn't an official recognition of the first feeding, or the weaning of Jesus. You would think that there's some kind of marker there, and there's not. It was funny, because like, who is this Protestant Yahoo from up the road, like schooling me on whether or not there should be this recognition of like this proto-Eucharistic moment, in the story. And here's the fun part about it, is like, I'm having this revelation, and I know that women have had this revelation for years before me. It's like, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about nursing a baby before? This is incredible. I'm having this revelation. And the reason that I had to wait so long to see the priest is because they were celebrating the Immaculate Conception of Mary's conception from her mother. So it's just really super interesting that it was the day. It was either the Annunciation or the Immaculate Conception, but it was a day that they were already celebrating Mary. So there was something in the ether that day that made me super mindful of Mary, but mothers in general, and this idea that when we talk about the sense of taste of what a holy moment that must have been to nurse God. I mean, right. It's just such, I can imagine the intimacy and the fear, right? The fear and the intimacy and all of those things. And I think there's nothing that officially marks that, because the church is still uncomfortable with Jesus's full humanity.
And I think that's what it is, right? There's sure. a bit of there's a lot of uncomfortable bits there, right? And we don't, just as a society, we don't do uncomfortable well, right? It's why we don't grieve well. It's why we don't, it's why we don't do a lot of things well.
But one thing I like to say is if you have a crucifix or if you have a picture and I have a crucifix in my office, and if Jesus is clothed, you're already sanitizing humanity, right? Jesus wasn't clothed during the crucifixion. The whole point of crucifixion was to humiliate you to the point of death, right? And we are we cover Jesus, and we kind of scrub the humanity of it all. Yes, we get the divine part, like we worship, we do lift high the cross, and we do that really well. And so how can our own humanity be informed with the full humanity of Christ?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's a messiness to the Christmas story that can be completely sanitized and forgotten. And the messiness of that is fear. It's a first-time mom giving birth somewhere in Bethlehem. I mean, just, there's that. And then there's also the beauty and the intimacy of that first feeding, and what that, and I love how Scripture, all it says is Mary treasured and pondered, and I think it's because words just don't work in those moments. The only thing you can do is to treasure and ponder this moment. So there's a messy holiness that comes with Christmas Eve for sure.
Right. I often like to think about that, but also the moments where Mary and Joseph were like, it's your freaking turn. I changed this dude an hour ago. Right. It's your turn.
Mary, I'm trying to watch the game. I'm so tired of having to change these diapers. Yeah, for sure. I love that. Like, because also with taste is like, did Jesus have a preferred food?
Right.
These really very, very human things. I mean, did he say like, Mom, really Mediterranean again? Were there more like grape leaves again, Mom? Seriously. Like these really human moments that become scandalous, frankly, because I think we're uncomfortable in our own skin,
right?
As God's children, but absolutely, and taste, that chapter, at least in the book, really dives into the humanness of it all, right? To imagine, Jesus having a preference of food and this proto Eucharistic moment, the reciprocity of all of that really brings, like I said, a messy holiness to our Christmas experience.
Right. Well, and along with taste, for us, even just in our own lives, comfort food's a big deal, right? Especially around the holidays, whether it be Thanksgiving or Christmas or birthdays or whatever special events.
For sure.
Taste is a big deal. It's tea cakes in our house, man.
Tea cakes? Is that what you said?
Yeah, tea cakes. Just simple little cookies. And my wife and her mom, all the years she was growing up, they'd watch Meet Me in St. Louis and bake tea cakes. And it wasn't Christmas until that happened.
Yeah.
And especially now that my mother-in-law is gone, that's a big thing in our house, is to just
a marker of holy moments.
Put the apron on and make some tea cakes, get the kitchen dirty, watch Meet Me in St. Louis, and just do the thing that we do. and it's taste. It comes back to just those moments of just holy moments, and taste bring that back up in people.
Same
in a lot of different
Z's,
ways.
though it's white Christmas on our end.
Yeah,
right.
nice.
I mean, until Bing Crosby sings White Christmas,
Yes.
Santa's not coming. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, I mean, for me, it's Scrooged. Like I can't. It's not Christmas until I
Bill
watch
Murray.
Scrooge. Yeah, I'm not gonna
that's
lie.
a good movie.
It is a good movie.
Actually, will tell you, like last year, like I had a hard time finding it last year, and I was kind of getting upset because I couldn't watch.
Yeah.
Like I have to have that like at least once in the season because it rings true to me.
Exactly.
And you know, for taste, like there's just something about the peppermint bark stuff that just like. I don't like peppermint any other time of the year but this season.
Yeah, sure.
And yesterday my daughter and I were doing grocery shopping, and we walked by some of that because they kind of already had a deal there, and she's like, "Oh, it's that season, isn't it, Dad?" I said, "Yeah,
yes, it is.
Have some fun." So you know, I we think about taste, and what's funny is like I'm actually flipping this in the chapter, so this will be chapter 2 for us. Like this is the second week for us because we're going to do it during communion. Like the second Sunday for us falls on communion. So what a better way to talk about taste than on the Sunday we're doing communion. And for me, there's always this line that I remember from a long time ago. United Methodist Communications and the Board of Discipleship put out this little DVD on communion, and they were interviewing this one little girl. And she said, Jesus tastes good when they asked her what she thinks about communion.
Yeah, sure.
And ever since that moment, I just think of Jesus tastes good. Like we want Jesus to taste good in this season. And whether it's we offer communion, like one of the things we do in our high holy seasons here is we offer communion after the service on Sunday mornings. And then on the big communion day, we do it all together. But it's been really cool to see how people really love having that. And I've already had people say, "You're doing communion right after every service this year, right?" Yeah. And there is that sense of like
only if you pay your tithe. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a box at the door that you have to,
into the year giving.
Yeah.
And that's what I do every Sunday is my invitation to communion is taste and see that the Lord is good. Right. In terms of taste, like and this is embarrassing, but I'm going to say it to your 12 listeners. The gingerbread latte at Starbucks is just it's like a hug from the inside, man. Like it doesn't feel like Christmas until I have, and I know that's so like urban and dumb, and it's like $6 for like, a medium coffee. But there's something in the way, right? There's something about the gingerbread latte at Starbucks. And I know that's awful, but it is legit. And once I have that first one, it's like, okay, we can now start talking about Christmas.
Yeah, we can do this.
That's what it is for me.
We could do this.
I mean, now as an adult, it's the Christmas beers. I'm not gonna lie. When I saw that the Christmas beers were coming on the shelf, like I was like, it's getting closer.
It is.
Bring the hops.
Yes. Bring them.
So the last chapter, we'll get there. The last chapter is about touch, and especially we talk about the humanness of the messiness of humans. Touch is one of those things that has to be treated very, very intentionally, right? And one of the things I discovered in Luke's gospel is there are only 2 times when Jesus's body is fully embraced, which is super interesting to me. The first is with Simeon in the temple when Jesus is a baby. I mean, certainly Mary held him and certainly Joseph held him, but Luke is making a point here that the only mention of someone holding Jesus as a child is with Simeon and Jesus's dedication. Now my eyes have seen your salvation. Let your servant depart in thy peace. And it's this beautiful moment where Jesus's entire self is being embraced in the temple. And then this moment of this is it, right? Simeon and Anna both kind of have this moment of, and it's almost like Adam and Eve, like Simeon and Anna in the temple with Christ. There's this really kind of Adam and Eve moment of now we can rest, now we can finally rest. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture. The only other time where Jesus's full body is embraced is Joseph of Arimathea taking Jesus off of the cross. And look, and that is more explicit in Luke than it is in the other gospels of they took the body down. There's this idea of embracing that. And again, like that makes you unclean. Like there's a vulnerability there. And what I think Luke intends to suggest with this is that if we embrace Jesus, we have to embrace the whole picture, the whole story, right? The Apostles' Creed isn't enough. We have to talk about the miracles. We have to talk about Jesus's hunger and lament for Jerusalem. We have to talk about healing of the blind man, but also Jesus getting really upset. How long must I be with you? You know, these kinds of things. There's flipping over tables, but there's also embracing the woman who has been suffering for 12 years. Mm-hmm. You know, if we are to follow Jesus, if we are to be Christian, we are to embrace the fullness of that story, fully divine, fully human, birth to the empty tomb, you know, kind of a story. So in that last chapter talking about touch, I often during Advent do an inventory of what has occupied your hands this week. Is it the plastic of your keyboard, right? Is it the glass of your phone? Could it be that it is the embrace of another, right? Let's do an inventory of what is occupying our hands, and that gives us a really good indication of how it is with our soul, right? Mm-hmm. You know, because if I have not embraced another human since last Sunday we met, you know, what's going on there? I'm not saying that it's your fault or their fault or whatever. It's just, hey, what's going on there? Let's think about that, because for some they live alone, right? And there's this, because we pass the peace every Sunday with Holy Communion. And it's an introvert's nightmare. And I understand that. Like there's some people and because I do surveys every now and again, worship surveys, like, hey, how's it going? What would you like? And every year it's like, could you please stop doing passing the peace? Like, please stop. I don't want to, you know. And it's so funny because like from the pulpit looking out into the sanctuary, the left side of our sanctuary, that must be where all the extroverts sit. Because even when I try to like convene them back, like they're still talking they're sharing recipes. You know, they're talking about the game, you know, they're making plans for a spring break, you know, and they're just all over the place. And like the whole right side of the sanctuary is like calmly standing there waiting for all the extroverts to finish, you know, it's so fantastic, you know, so, you know, touch is something that we don't talk enough about, the good of it, the bad of it, right? Because for some touch is something that violates, and it's too close and it's too much, you know. And the church, much like messing or wrestling with the messiness of humanity, touch is part of that too. And the church has to wrestle with that and be a good steward of that, and to communicate that well.
I love it's at the end of John, when the disciple whom Jesus loves reclines into Jesus's chest. One of my favorite moments of really Jesus embracing others, but just that full willingness to relax, to be present, and just settle into the chest of Christ. I mean, I could imagine after all of that, sitting on that beach and just going, yeah, okay, we can do this. Yeah, and then having all of that upturned and him being like, go do the things, please.
Yeah, jeez, for sure.
I taught you all of the things. Please go do it.
Yeah, please go feed my sheep, please.
Yeah,
please go feed my sheep.
Please go do it. So, but yeah, I mean, you see those moments throughout, and I think we miss a lot of them. I think we miss a lot of written moments. You know, the lady touching, you know, the corner of his robe. Folks embracing them in very minimal ways, and then the really unwritten or unspoken ones. Yeah, you know that Mary and Joseph held him. You know that they passed him around the temple. You know Elizabeth and they all got their chance to hold on to him, right, and just cuddle him and snuggle him, and you know do the things we do with babies, right? And
hey, Elizabeth, John is running me up a wall. Can we do a play date? Can we get Jesus and John together, please?
Yeah.
You know, stop walking on water. Come back in the house.
That's why we don't have the Gospel of Thomas, because you get that stuff.
You get that kind of stuff. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it does. I think you're exactly right. It brings the humanity back into the fully divine this season that I think we lose in other ways. And then sometimes we're uncomfortable with it, right? Because it's
Sure.
we don't want to talk about that.
Sure.
At least publicly, we can think about it, and it gives us the worm and fuzzies. And but yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how we experience Christmas in really real and tangible ways, rather than get lost in what Christmas has become as a society and as a culture.
Right. And that's really the point when you get to the end of the book is what is it about what is that experience of Christmas that really matters to you? And we always kind of as a postlude, the Sunday after Christmas, it's called Carols and Cocoa in our congregation. And I ask the same question every year, like, what has to happen? What do you have to experience for you to have experienced Christmas? Like, what is that to you? Is it family has come to the house? Is it the house is clean and the tree is there? And finally, there's this moment of peace. Is it you're constantly traveling? Is it a particular song? Is it a taste? Is it a smell? Right? What is it that marks that Christ is born to you? And that's really by the end of this study and by the end of this book is what is it about Christmas that you must experience to reveal to you that Christ is born? And then take that and share that, right? It doesn't have to be overly theological. It doesn't, but it's you. It's your story. It's part of who you are. Share that. And that's when evangelism and sharing good news takes care of itself, because you're so excited about the thing that speaks to you. You can't help but go tell that on the mountain. You know what I'm saying? So the book eventually points us to, like, what is that singular experience of Christmas that matters to you, that you then, without embarrassment, and with reckless abandon, that is what you go tell from the mountaintops, right? So that's eventually where we get with the study.
Well, and you brought up a good point on touch, and we are now in a space where loneliness is one of the biggest things that has come up
Absolutely
in our society because of COVID and just a lot of things, and that touch component of church is so important that I think sometimes gets lost because of introverts. And I'm like, I do not like those times. However, I use those times as an opportunity for me to see somebody that I wouldn't see, that wouldn't greet me at the end of the service, or new people that may come in. I'm very intentional about that time. I never talk to the same people Sunday after Sunday, because I've watched pastors get in a rut of just talking to the same 5 or 6 people. I'm very intentional about who I see. Maybe it's someone that hasn't been in the space in a while, and just, hey, I'm glad to see you today. So good to see you. Extend a hand, shake their hand, and once I made it to be something intentional, it really did away for me. It took back the, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to be the introvert pastor that just walks through and just says, hi.
Hey.
Yeah. But I tell my hospitality and ushers that my intentionality of this is to see people that I haven't seen in a while, to get to meet the new people in a way that I wouldn't in the passing line, or just to reach out to those that I know that, hey, I know you lost somebody this week. We're just glad that you're here. That kind of pastoral care moment, that 5 minutes that we allot is such a crucial thing for what we do on Sunday mornings, of making those connections that I think sometimes gets lost in the, well, we don't want to do this because it just, and I know me, just the way that I am, I judge how long that time is going to be based off of what I know I'm going to preach, how long the sermon's going to be. And so if I know it's not a long sermon today, then I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to give them more time. They need it. Like, and creating that space to be intentional about what we do in that moment can make people feel like, hey, like, I heard we had a guest the other 2 weeks ago say, this is the most welcoming church we've ever been in. And part of me thinks, like, how, like, and then I was like, oh, the greeting time.
You need to get out more.
Yeah. Like the greeting time, that was key for them. And touch is so important in the life of the church that I think we forget that. And it becomes one of those hard things that we don't want to talk about, because we have to be real. Like, there are situations where touch has done harm. However, I think that extending of a hand, or, just the side hug, or, and everybody in my congregation laughs. Like, every congregation I've ever served knows I'm not a hugger, but they know that I will hug in the right moments. And so
Sure.
last Sunday, this woman hugged my wife and my kids, and then I was like, well, okay. And so I gave her a big old hug, and she was, you could tell she was a little taken back. And I said, hey, just because I don't like to do it doesn't mean I won't do it. And so I think, in a sense of touch, when we think of Christmas, like, there are things that we touch, the chrismons, the the if you do
evergreen
bell
needles,
ringing, all that stuff is so important. It's something, like, I know when we put up our Christmas tree at home, I love looking at the ornaments that we have, because some of them are ones that I had as a kid.
Wow.
Or some of them are some that my mom gave us, or I always, when we put our tree skirt on, my mom made our tree skirt. And ever since my mom has passed, that to me is the most important part of the tree. Even though we have like a little Charlie Brown Christmas tree, and it's actually built for like a 6-foot tree, we still find a way to make that stuff work. And you think of, like, in our worship spaces, we use the nativity. Like, do you have the kids touch the nativity? The one that they can touch, not the porcelain one that, was given 20 years ago, or, but like, how, creating that space of touch in Advent I think is something to really lean into, because there's so much there that we can touch and experience.
Oh, for sure. Not only with the Christmas tree and the ornaments, but the embrace of another human, the cold, right? It's a definitive seasonal change, and I hope that makes us mindful of those who don't have shelter, right? The touch, the constant touch of cold that they're experiencing during the season. Yeah, all of that is amazingly important. And I hope that this idea of God putting on flesh, right, and walking among us makes us mindful of other humans and their story and their need for embrace, their need for comfort, and their need for justice. And that's really where we end up.
Yeah, I love that. Just the fullness of, like you said, bringing the humanity back into very divine moments, and paying really close attention to that, sets us up for the rest of the year, right? I think we do that well at Easter, but I don't know that we do that so well at Advent. And putting some special focus on that, I think, is pretty sacred. So good job. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
I gotta ask, though, for both of you guys, what has to happen? What has to happen for Christmas, for you to have experienced Christmas?
I need to hear Wham at least 14 times.
That is not enough.
If that doesn't, last Christmas gave you my heart, like, until that happens, Mary's just got to hold on. Can't have Jesus born. No, what is the one thing? I mean, part of that is the white Christmas and that gathering. For me, it doesn't feel like Christmas happens until I have that moment of peace, because the season is so hectic. And Advent, I think it's hilarious that we keep talking about, we must wait, as we're doing like 50,000 different and new things. But it happens at some point, like at 10 a.m. on Christmas Day, right? Where the gifts have been opened, breakfast has been had. There's nothing on the agenda for another day and a half, something like that. Where it's just like, there's this moment of, okay, we can now put 2023 in the file. There's that kind of a moment of, for good or ill, it's over, right? So that moment of breathing is really helpful, at least for me, for the season, to really feel. And it takes me a long time to get into the season, I mean, because I'll listen to Christmas music for several weeks. I mean, it's rolling now. And that's fine. You can hate me for that. That's fine.
I'll hate you for it. I'm here for it.
He loves it.
November 1, first song that played, Wham.
Yes. Yeah. As soon as we take off our Halloween mask, it's like,
Yep.
fire it up.
Yep.
Fire Wham up.
Yep.
And then Paul McCartney after that, to wish us a wonderful Christmas time.
That's right.
And then Elton John, Step Into Christmas. So it takes me a long time to feel Christmassy. And I mean, and that's just part of my personality. Like if there's a 3-day clergy retreat, it's going to take me a day and a half even to get in the mood to be there. So there's this moment where finally, after Christmas happens, now it feels like Christmas, at least. And that's me. This is me.
I like it. Matthew?
I'm not gonna lie, it's when we light the first Advent candle. And that's just it for me. Like that's when it hits. It doesn't matter what I do up until that point, how many times I decorate, all that stuff. Like when it really hits is when we have the people up there saying whatever liturgy we're using that year and just having that first candle lit, and just like that's when it hits me. And that's when I get excited about it. I'm one that we don't play Christmas music until we come back from Thanksgiving. That's just,
you jerk.
I know.
I mean, why?
Hey, there's some good Thanksgiving songs. I mean, Adam Sandler's
Name
Thanksgiving.
6.
Adam Sandler on repeat.
If you say that just the theme song to the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving movie, and I'm gonna throw a book through my screen.
There's also, I mean, I'll go indigenous here, and I play powwow music.
You would.
I'll just ask my daughter. There have been times where she's like, "Dad, you can't play that as you're dropping me off." I'm like, "Watch me." And
the hell I can't. That's awesome. No, okay. Thanksgiving music, and this is not apropos to experiencing Christmas, but of course I have a playlist of Thanksgiving music, and it takes a very specific. It's very like mountain folk, simple gifts kind of a vibe. So I dig Thanksgiving music. So I mean, there's much love there.
Yeah, love it. I think for me, it's become the Blue Christmas service.
Oh yeah,
creating space, just so important in the things that we do, and it's so become that space of let's just take a minute to actually slow down, process the year, process the grief and tension and all of the things that we're holding on to that don't make this season fun, that make this season really, really hard.
yeah.
And for me, it's become we have to do that first before we can settle into the fullness of what the season is, because it's a both and.
Sure.
It's a damn hard season and it's a damn fun season.
Yeah.
But it can't be fun if we ignore the hard parts. And so that has become sacred space for me. And it really, really has to happen before it feels like Christmas.
Yeah, and ours we call it the longest night.
Yeah.
And my one of my associates, Tommy, his name's Tommy Moore, does an excellent. He does that service, and he does an amazing job. The last several, I mean, it's raw and it's emotional, and I mean, he's just and that is one of my favorite services. One, because I'm not preaching, I'm just kind of enjoying it and being in there, but the way that he is able to hold space, right, and to give people permission to grieve is really remarkable, and he does a fantastic job with that service for sure. That is for sure a highlight.
Yeah, it's a big service for me, and I know it's one of those that no matter what size church I serve, 6 people are going to show up, right?
Yeah, no, sure.
It is truly sacred space. I love it. I'll do it if nobody shows up, and I'll just sit in the sanctuary and cry.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
For this year, or the last 2 years here at Castle Rock, we actually have our Stephen ministers lead the bulk of the service.
Oh yeah.
And one, it gives them some face time for people to see Stephen ministers, and we actually do some work with making that a thing, let people know that that's available, or if that's something they feel like that they want to be a part of, that here's how to go about that too. And that went over so well last year that they were like, we have to do that again this year. And like was like, all right, I kind of already planned on that, so we'll get working on that. I mean, that's just, to me, that service itself has become almost as important as Christmas Eve, just because there's so many people who struggle with this season and grieve in this season, that why can't the church offer that space too, and needs to.
And in terms of the intimacy and the intentionality of that, it's one of our only services that we don't stream.
Right.
We actually turn the tech off, and it's lit with candles, and it's as much as I love technology and Chat GPT and being in the metaverse and this kind of thing, we turn all of it off for Longest Night. Right, very tangible, very human, very down to earth, feet on the ground, kind of a thing. It's powerful.
Yeah. We leave the tech on for ours and our Ash Wednesday service, but there's no visual focal. There's no person up front. Everything comes from off.
It's very Taizé of you.
Yeah, but we know that there's people that, because we live in Montana, can't show up because of snow and ice and weather, and it's already been dark for 17 hours by the time that service comes around. Yeah, so we're intentional about leaving that stuff on, but not having a person up front to break that space. So yeah, I think it's really cool, all of those just really intentional, tangible ways that we settle into this season.
We also have a Stephen minister who lives in Illinois and still does a lot of great work out of Illinois and is very remote for us. And actually, one of the things I'm trying to figure out how we can do this year is to have him actually have a part where we would, show him on the screen, where he would actually do one of the readings. Because that'd just be a great way to have him involved as well. And so, but it is very dark and blue. Like, I'm very intentional about it being very dark and blue in there. I definitely work on creating a space of low light and just intimacy that makes it even more special. So Zach, what else did we have on the question list for?
I really just want to end us with something that Matt wrote in the first few pages here, because I have Amazon pulled up in the free copy. Because that's the
need to buy the book.
I am.
Yeah, come on, man. God bless. How am I going to buy Optimus Prime for my kids this year?
I got enough books. I've
got the book. I've got the leader's guide.
You got all the colors, man.
I've got the digital thing, the white for all that.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. You wrote, the creation unfolds through the repetition of these two actions: God said and God saw. I can almost imagine that God's eyes were closed in the first utterance of "let there be." And maybe there really wasn't much to see anyway. With eyes closed, God speaks. And then when God's voice ceases to reverberate through the cosmos, God opens divine eyes and sees that the light is good. I love that line. I think that's a really, really important way to step into Advent.
It's a beautiful thought, isn't it?
It is. I know. I'm sorry I had to read your own words to you.
No, that's really it sounds great. I'm surprised I wrote that. That's nice. It's got a nice rhythm to it. I appreciate that. But it's so beautiful. God, it's so beautiful to think that almost, God with God's eyes closed speaks, "Let there be light," and then kind of this moment. Yeah. Oh my God, this is so good. Right. Almost a playful, beautiful moment. Yeah, for sure.
Right. And then you lean into Jesus opening his eyes and birth and the cry, all of that. You paint a beautiful picture, my friend.
Thanks,
Good
man.
job.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You can buy the book too.
Next year.
Yeah, he'll use it next year.
I'm always a year behind on your stuff, man.
Yeah. You can buy the book wherever fine books are sold.
That's right.
Yes.
I'll just get a free copy from Matthew over there.
That's right. You could do that too. That's fine.
I might have one I can share with you. It might be highlighted in. There might be
notes written in the margin.
I'll write funny notes in it just so I just see if you actually read it.
Yeah. So Zach, go to mattrawle.com and you can buy it from Christian Book. You can buy it from Cokesbury, Amazon, Barnes. You can find it lots of places. Anyone can find it in lots of places for sure.
Wherever you buy your books, if you put #Bearded Theologians in, you'll get nothing. There's no promo.
That's right. There's no discount code. There's nothing. Right. You get a URL error. That's what happens.
Yes. 404 page not found.
Or you get the suspicious web block saying that you shouldn't go here. Matt, we definitely thank you for coming on. We love having you on, and the invitation is always open for you.
Sure.
I mean, you can be our South correspondent, and you can just tell us about the weather. And
today it's 75 here on Christmas Eve, a rainy day.
Bonfire's canceled.
The bonfire's canceled at Asbury United Methodist Church because it's too damn hot on Christmas Eve.
We thank you for your time. For our listeners, like Matt said, just go to his website and pick up his, not only that book, but all the other books that he has. I'm sure those are on his websites too. He's got some amazing books to use for those leaders that are looking for something to use in their church. Just thank you for listening, and continue to check us out on beardedtheologians.com, where you can find all, I think 6 now Matt Rawle videos that we have up.
Hey, there we go.
They're all there. Just search them in the search bar and you'll find them. It's a great way to connect with us. And don't forget to go to our website and click the buy some gear and pick up some gear.
Oh, I have my right here. Here's some swag. It's on my brainstorm journal for those who are going to click on the video. Beardedtheologians.com sticker on my brainstorm journal.
There you go.
There it is. I'm a fan.
We thank our listeners for listening. And for that, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Guys, I want you to subscribe and like this video and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.